And welcome to this Wednesday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us as we transition away from the NCAA tournament and all the action that was involved there. Congratulations if you had the Florida Gators. I did not. I was buried, a dagger in my back there. Kelvin Sampson, what the hell were you doing? Unbelievable. They victimized Duke in that fashion and steal the semifinal game as Duke, as we've been talking about, biggest choke since Mama Cass and that ham sandwich, which, as we've also told you, was a falsehood. She was just snorting mounds of pyramids of cocaine and had a heart attack. But the legend was there that this rather rotund woman choked on a ham sandwich, and that's how she checked out. And it was the biggest choke since then, in my opinion, if you believe the original story about Mama Cass. To see Duke melt down like that, and did not Houston do something very similar? Couldn't make a bucket at the end of the game. Couldn't even get a shot off at the end of the game. Just a disaster as they literally fell victim to their own strategies where they spit the bit, coughed up a big lead, weren't able to capitalize on the momentum that they had at the time outside of the second half, and ended up losing the tournament and losing the championship. Now 0-3 in championship games as the Florida Gators, well-deserved, too. I mean, they ratcheted up their defense there and ended up really playing well in the final moments of what was a bloodbath of a game. But that's behind us now. We've been turning our attention to different things, including yesterday. And this shows you, and I've never been a huge trend handicapper. I always am fascinated by people that are using quantifiers like, well, you know what, since 1940, I mean, you're talking about teams that had like Ruth and Gehrig in the lineup when you're talking about Yankee trends. I don't know how applicable they are today, especially with the differentials in the game, the equipment, the size of the athletes, the overall depth, the way everything is contested, the pitching. How relevant are some of these trends? You hear them cited all the time in football. But you would think if you were going to be a trend handicapper, you might want to reduce that down a little parenthetical and only go with recent trends that may be relevant. And that's where sports betting becomes especially fascinating and also can be equally frustrating unless you are a contrarian, which would have been an ideal spot last night to be in when Scotty M gave us his analysis yesterday on the program. Toronto Maple Leafs, number one in their division and number 2 or 3 in the Eastern Conference overall in the NHL standings, and they've been good all season long, going against the Florida Panthers. Now, the two teams of late have been going in completely opposite, diametrically opposed directions. The Panthers rousing suspicions that maybe they weren't quite there, ready to defend their Stanley Cup championship, in spite of the fact that they loom right now, I believe, as the second choice to win it all. The Dallas Stars are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup at 6-1. You're only getting 6.5 to 1 on the Panthers. I believe you got 8 to 1 or so last year when they actually went on to win the championship, and that was coming out of an appearance in the finals the previous season. So the trends, though, were indicating that Toronto was the team that's gathering the momentum towards the end of the regular season. The Panthers had lost 5 straight games, one of which was in overtime. So they were 0-4-1 in their last 5, winless in their last 5, one stinking point out of a possible 10, and appeared to be in a little bit of a nosedive in spite of the fact that their general manager, Bill Zito, is, I think, one of the shrewdest that we've seen in operation in any sport, the way that he's handled the position in the relative short time that he's been there, replacing a legend in the NHL, Dale Talon, who appeared to be just stuck and unable to get out of that mired in mediocrity syndrome, where every year the big question, what was more likely to be at what point in the early stages of the season will the Panthers under Dale Talon's leadership be mathematically eliminated? And how early will that come? That was always the bet. Then this Zito guy comes in. He makes a couple of monumental trades, including getting Kachuk and others. He trades a very popular player, Jonathan Huberdeau, who was a nice finesse player, but wasn't the kind of guy that was going to bring you the toughness to win the Stanley Cup. And we know that is no easy task. Probably, is it fair to say, or is it just cliche to say that the Stanley Cup is the most difficult championship in all sports to win? When you look at what you have to go through to win 4-7 best of 7 series in the NHL, and how competitive it is and how level the playing field is. And that home ice doesn't mean that much. Seedings don't mean that much. 8s beat number 1, 7 beats number 2. It happens much more as a matter of routine in the NHL than it does in any other sport, where it usually stacks up as an impossibility. But last night, as teams are trying to gather momentum into the postseason, which I don't know that anybody's resting players because they're still juxtaposing and jockeying for position. Toronto comes in having lost 2 of 3 games to the Florida Panthers, but winning 4 in a row. Panthers losing 5 in a row. All trends would indicate recent tendencies that the Panthers were really going to be up against it in this game, as Toronto tried to even the season series at 2 games apiece. Final result, with the Maple Leafs, and they were favored in the game on the road. Maple Leafs favored on the road against the Florida Panther team that does have the kind of toughness and resiliency that you're thinking they might take this thing seriously. And so you're getting a price at home with the Florida Panthers last night, and of course they prevail 3-1. Last goal, an empty netter to account for the final margin of 2 goals. But game all the way through, you thought was trending the way that you would like to see it if you were back in the Panthers, and busting up what looked to be an obvious tendency and a recent tangible series of results. This isn't going back to when the Toronto Maple Leafs had Andy Bathgate skating for them. This is stuff that was happening in the last week. And yet, in open defiance of what would appear to be some concrete evidence that Toronto was the play last night, whoosh, Panthers go in there and knock you out of the block. So the point being that the best of logic doesn't always prevail. And you have to anticipate when some kind of, it wasn't a fluke situation for the Florida Panthers, second choice for the Stanley Cup championship, to win a game at home. But the way the 2 teams were trending, you would have to think that the Toronto Maple Leafs were the players, Scotty M pointed out last night, and it ended up being whoosh, just a dagger in your back. All right, a lot of stuff happening. We have the Masters coming up. That's always a curiosity for me. And golf is one of my favorite bets, believe it or not, even though I don't make it all that frequently. I do get involved in a couple of golf pools, which are fascinating, one of which consists of having 7 lists of about 12 to 13 players on each list. And they're all grouped into what caliber of player and what chance they have of winning. So you're not going to see Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy on different lists. You're going to have to choose between one of the premier players and see what happens. So the odds are prohibitive, too. If you're betting Scheffler, and this guy clearly is worthy of favoritism, it would be a great bet if you could bet that Scotty Scheffler, whether or not he'd get arrested again, that would have to be a long shot. And if you had that last year, then congratulations. You are the best gambler on. Never mind Billy Walters. You are the best gambler that ever lived. So there's no sexiness, though. There's no romance in betting the favorites in a golf tournament. And it really, even if you think about it, if Scotty Scheffler is 3-1, let's say, in the majority of golf tournaments that he enters, how many tournaments does he play every year? About 30? Does he go that many times to the post? More often? Let's say it's 30. Maybe a big number, but so at 3-1, he wins 9 tournaments. You're barely getting your money back. Actually, you're losing if you bet him every time. When you factor in various other considerations that are not particularly favorable to the player, like juice. But in this case, you don't have to bet like 110 to win 100. You're getting that straight up 4-1 or thereabouts on Scotty Scheffler. No sexiness in that. So we're looking at this from the standpoint. And it's interesting to me, been talking about it a little bit this week on a couple of shows. What happened to the LIV Tour guys? Now, I'm watching some interviews on the Golf Channel, and I see John Rahm, and it literally looks like he's under sedation. This was this fiery Spaniard that was the second coming to Seve Ballesteros. It was going to be extremely demonstrative, and you would know exactly what his emotions were, because maybe not quite as fiery and as dynamic as Seve Ballesteros. He was more of a quiet, reserved guy. But you could see that thing. He would sink a putt and give it one of those, that type of motions. I mean, by his standards, he was a little bit, wearing to the point where he was sort of, an emotional being out there on the golf course. And he literally looked like he was under sedation, like he was one of the patients in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, sitting around for a group meeting with Nurse Ratched. just answering questions, in very sort of, I don't know, indirect fashion, and talking philosophically about where his game is at. But the question would be this, and if you're going to be betting the Masters golf tournament, which is always a fascinating bet, if you're in contention all 4 days, even if you end up in the losers bracket there, it's a fascinating bet. You get a pretty good ride for your money, and you don't have to risk a lot to have an enjoyable time. If you have $25 on a guy and he's 30 to 1, it certainly enhances your desire and your interest level in watching the tournament if your guy is in contention. So I'm looking at the LIV Tour guys. I don't know what to make of them. They all seem to be under some form of dilaudid drip as they're talking about their chances in the tournament here. You're not going to hear a lot of braggadocio type of stuff. It's not like in tennis, you got Nick Kyrgios telling you that he's going to win the tournament and that he hates everybody else in the field, including Djokovic. But the LIV Tour guys, a lot of acrimony a couple of years ago when it first came up, whether or not they were even going to be able to get entrance and access into some of these tournaments. Then they decided, okay, never mind, you money-hungry, bloodthirsty rats. We're going to allow you back in because we don't have any way to keep you out. And there seemed to be a determination there by Koepka, by I don't know if Ron was quite as involved in this, by DeChambeau, to demonstrate that, hey, we are the best golfers in the world. Never mind our schmucky tour that doesn't draw any interest, has a television deal with, who knows, who televises the LIV Tour. They just had one in our city, and I didn't even know it was happening. You heard nothing about it. You saw nothing. I don't know who won. Just happened here like a couple of days ago. So it was kind of great. But it'll be interesting to see where those guys stack up in terms of being in contention. Brooks Koepka, I got an inside piece of information here from one Mike Jones. I don't know if he mentioned this. I think he might have mentioned it on Monday, that he was playing golf with Brooks Koepka's father, a local guy here in South Florida, Bob Koepka. Brooks Koepka, originally from West Palm Beach, Florida. So naturally, it's not unusual to think that his old man, being a golfer as well, has been around and would know several people. Said that Brooks is almost, he's taken on kind of a Clubber Lang sort of approach, and that he's just been hitting his 7-iron all day long. He's walking around the house hitting 7-irons, hitting chip shots, making sure that his short game is ready to tackle the challenges that are maybe not as readily apparent when you're just looking on TV at what goes on at Augusta National. But the subtleties, the undulation of the greens and all of this other stuff that comes into play there, where you can hit what you think is a good shot, and the next thing you know, it's rolling forever there, and you're like Payne Stewart screaming, they put bikini wax on these greens. So is Koepka in good enough form to win the Masters? You know he plays the course well enough, and you know he's dynamic when it comes to being competitive in these spots. If he's been dedicated, as his father might have implied to Mike Jones, one of our guys here on the show on Bury Your Bookie, is it possible that he's a good play at 31 to 1? Or am I dreaming? I'm going to consider that we're reacting to semi-inside information. Now, it's not to say, I mean, I would imagine everybody's working on a short game. I mean, holy Larry Mize. If you know that that's what it's going to take, naturally you have to be accurate off the tees and put the ball in the right places, because there's some very compromising things if you happen to be slightly offline. So we'll see. But I'm going to go ahead and take a shot there with Brooks Koepka, 31 to 1. To win the upcoming Masters. Probably be out of it, missed the cut. But any guy that has the same set of teeth as Secretariat, I gotta go ahead and give him a little bit of a shot. Also surprising, we talked about hockey a little bit and the hockey trends with that Panther-Toronto game, which went the opposite way of our prediction yesterday by Scotty M. Interesting to me, and this is true in the NBA, interesting to me that Washington, with 107 points, second highest total of points in the standings in the NHL and leading the East. And Winnipeg, second overall in the NHL. Winnipeg has 110 points. Winnipeg's 12 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup, and Washington, you're getting a 10 to 1 price. Two teams that have been the best in the NHL all season long, being universally and completely ignored by the odds makers and apparently the bettors, as Dallas is the favorite, Florida's second choice, and there are several other teams in between. I had to look down the list to find where the Washington Capitals were being rated as possibilities to win a Stanley Cup. Seems like a pretty fat price for the two teams that were the best in the regular season, doesn't it? 10-1 and 12-1. You could actually bet both of those teams and nearly get the equivalent of what you would be reaping back if you had Dallas or the Florida Panthers. So you got two teams that played better hockey overall all season long. Is it not what? I mean, are they not playoff tested enough to make people think that they can win it all? We know the Panthers have been to the finals 2 years in a row, 1-1, and were badly compromised 2 years ago when they played the Las Vegas Golden Knights. But pretty odd that the two best teams in the league, and the same thing was true of the Cleveland Cavaliers in the East. Boston is favored over them, and looked to be possibly deservedly so when we saw them the way they handled the Knicks in overtime last night, with miracle shots again coming from Jason Tatum right near the buzzer, and then just grinding the Knicks down in that overtime period to come away with the victory. So interesting stuff there with regards to winning the Stanley Cup. The playoffs get underway, next week? So that'll be a lot of fun, and tremendous the last few games of the regular season going to mean a lot for playoff seeding in the Western Conference, especially in the NBA, where we do have the development tonight, which will be interesting to watch, of Luka Doncic returning to Dallas. So a lot of different stuff to take a look at on the board in terms of betting, especially betting futures. We'll be getting into the Kentucky Derby also on upcoming shows, so stay tuned and stick with us for that. But if you are betting the Masters and you can overcome the disappearance and literal spiriting away, does anybody know where these guys are? I mean, does anybody see anything from the LIV Tour guys? But if you're going to go ahead and concede that maybe they're sharp because they're not involved in this weekly grind and are so relaxed now because I don't know that any golfer that's at the top tier of the game, top 50, is not going to be set for life very early on in their career. But this is, talking about a gargantuan sum of money for many of these guys, $200-300 million, giving them all at once. Can we take a shot there that maybe we can make a score with Brooks Koepka to win the Masters? I know a lot of you guys are probably scurrying to your local betting app and saying, let me quickly bet Koepka to miss the cut. All right, hopefully you guys will fare well in all of your wagers. Thanks so much for joining us. Tomorrow, Mike Jones will join us, and we're going to get involved in a little pool action on the Masters tournament, which should be a lot of fun with the 7 list. And you pick 7 guys, you get the aggregate score of your team. Guy misses the cut. It's crucial because you get +3 for 2 days after that. And we'll see if we can't walk away with a big pile of cash for a minor investment, which is always the best strategy to use if you're going to be gambling. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of Bury Your Bookie.